Friends, and welcome to this week's edition of the Boot Room, the show where we look ahead to Town's weekend game. I'm Mark Heath, with me Stuart Watson. This weekend, Gillingham at home. On paper, you would say it's a Town win, Stewie, but is it going to be that straightforward? Gillingham have been in terrible form. They're clearly in trouble at the bottom of the table. They've got a new manager, and the new manager bounce has already kicked in. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I guess it could be the proverbial banana skin. Gillingham thrashed 7-2 at home by Oxford United last weekend, but since then, Neil Harris has come in. Looks like a real coup for them as a managerial appointment, someone who was heavily linked to the Ipswich job prior to McKenna getting it, of course. And they duly went and beat Crewe 1-0 at home on Tuesday night. Massive result for them, keeps alive their hopes of beating the drop. So we shall see what sort of shape they arrive at Portman Road in. Obviously, Ipswich thrashed them 4-0 at Priestfield in the early stages of the McKenna era, but Kieran McKenna is at pains to say that neither last weekend's result or that 4-0 win for Ipswich have any relevance going into this one, because so much has changed at the Gills since then.
Do you think there's a danger going into this game, Stu, that Town are a little bit too overconfident? Fans-wise, you'd imagine we'll be expecting walking into Portman Road tomorrow and expecting a big win against a side they've already tonked once this season and are in terrible trouble. But it's not necessarily going to be that straightforward, is it? With a new manager in and a kind of nothing to lose kind of going into this game.
I think there'll be an expectation level from the fans, rightly so, because Ipswich are in must-win territory now. They need to be winning most of their games between now and the end of the season to get into the top six. So Gillingham and Doncaster away next Tuesday night are, 6 points is all that will do. I don't think that the players will be underestimating this, because I think Kieran McKenna is so analytical about the opposition, the way he spoke about the changes that have already been made under Neil Harris, their change in formation, the players that they've brought in. You get the feeling that he'll have Ipswich fully prepared for this new look Gillingham side, a couple of new faces, but also a completely different sort of tactical approach under Neil Harris. So I feel confident that McKenna won't allow them to take their eye off the ball on this one.
Is this a game where they're going to have to be patient, do you think? You'd imagine Gillingham will come to stifle them and get the crowd maybe a little bit nervy at Portman Road?
Possibly, yeah. It sounded like Gillingham were very much the team on the front foot in the first half of their win against Crewe on Tuesday night. Could have been more than a goal to the good by half time. And then second half was a bit of a backs to wall, see out the 1-0 job. So they might just come to Portman Road and just chuck everything at it and just try and put Ipswich back on the back foot and see what happens. But if there is an element of patience required, if that first goal from an Ipswich point of view doesn't come, the crowd might get, if not edgy, just a little bit quiet, and the onus might be on the players to kind of lift the crowd rather than vice versa. So a test of character in a slightly different way, I would imagine, for the players this weekend.
Okay, let's talk about the team selection. You had a little update from Kieran McKenna yesterday about Lee Evans' fitness. So shall we start there? Clearly, that's going to be a talking point going into the game. They've missed him. They're missing Sam Morsey, obviously banned for another 2 games still. And Town have looked a little bit light in midfield without those two. What did Kieran tell you about Evans yesterday?
It will be a close call. He said it was a close call last weekend going into the game at Sheffield Wednesday. And by all accounts, Lee Evans has kind of been in and out of training this week with that groin issue that he felt in the warm-up ahead of the Accrington game, which has forced him to miss the last 3 games. They're going to make a late decision on him, today after training on Friday going into this game. So I think Morsey's absence is compounded by the miss of Lee Evans as well. Those two are starting to form a really good midfield partnership since McKenna arrived. So to not have them both at Hillsborough, I thought was a big miss. We talk a lot about Morsey. I think it's underestimated how much Evans was a miss as well. Backinson and El Mazouni were not the ideal duo, let's be honest, to go to Hillsborough for a big game. So it'll be interesting to see which two he goes with. If Evans doesn't make it this weekend, Tom Carroll comes back into the reckoning after he missed out last weekend. His wife had just given birth. The latest of the Ipswich Town players to be absent for that reason. We'll see. If there's no Evans, Arguably, El Mazzuni is the one that's the sort of closest thing you've got to a bit of the bite and tenacity of Sam Morsey. I thought he was better than Backinson at Hillsborough. So if you were making a choice out of those two to go alongside Carroll, personally, I'd be going with El Mazzuni. But Backinson's obviously a new boy in the building, and maybe that will be a temptation to play him. We'll see.
Was there any more team news before we start talking about your team? Kane Vincent-Young's obviously back available as well. Matt Penny, is he in the mix?
Yeah, Penny's back training again, full time, as you say. Vincent-Young's available again, but Ipswich have signed Dominic Thompson to play. You would imagine. So I'd expect him to go again on the left hand side.
Okay, well, let's get to your team then. I'll bring it up at the bottom, and you can talk about it a little bit. Not too much to really talk about in the back kind of four, really. That's kind of set. And there you've got Evans in your team alongside Carroll, and then Thompson. And Burns is nailed on, isn't he? You'd imagine. So it's really the top three, which is something we always seem to be talking about with Town. Do you have a little talk through your working?
Yeah, I've gone back to the Bash brothers, as McKenna has labelled them, in Norwood and Bonn up front, with Sonny Aluko just in behind. I think he provides a nice bit of balance in terms of someone who's cool and classy on the ball, while those front two go and ruffle a few feathers. That was the front three that started at Priestfield when Ipswich won 4-0. For that reason, I'd be going back to them. Last weekend, we saw Chaplin and Selina sort of playing as those dual number 10s in behind. Didn't really work at Sheffield Wednesday on that occasion. Not to say it won't work again, as it did against Accrington, but for this game, I'd be going back to the front two, especially as Ipswich failed to produce a single shot on target at Sheffield Wednesday last weekend. Get a couple of strikers back up top and see what happens.
And you've got Thompson there on the left hand side and Carroll alongside Evans in midfield. Thoughts on Carroll?
Yeah, I think he's, at times we've seen his sort of Premier League pedigree, someone who's obviously come through at Tottenham, played in the top flight for Swansea, and you can see that his calmness on the ball, he's just someone that he's like a metronome that just keeps the team ticking over. I think you've got to have the right balance of people around him, which is why I think if he plays, I'd be going for ideally Evans, if not El Mazzuni, to someone who can do a little bit more of the ugly stuff around him at times. So, but I do like Tom Carroll as a player. So if he's available, I'd be putting him back in.
And you're obviously there in the team. You haven't got the likes of Selina or Chaplin, so they'll be on the bench and what weapons to bring off the bench. Can you talk a little bit about why they're not starting in your side?
Well, as I say, 0 shots on target last weekend at Sheffield Wednesday. That wasn't all down to them. Ipswich did work some good positions, and there was some positives to take from that game. But for a kind of bounce of the ball of the box in time, at times things could have been different. But Selina's he's a big moments player, but I don't know sort of over the course of the 90 minutes whether he's contributing enough off the ball for McKenna still at the moment. Chaplin has got plenty of goals. He's been very busy and lively at times, but I just quite likes Norwood and Bonn as a front two. You could make an argument for any of those forward players at this moment in time, and whoever doesn't start, as you say, is a good weapon to have off the bench.
The proverbial good problem to have. Stewie, let's talk predictions. A game that we obviously Town really need to win. And do you think they are going to win? And if so, what do you think the score is going to be?
I do think they'll win. Yeah, I know a lot has changed at Gillingham. I think in some ways it's good that Ipswich are facing them for Harris's second game, that maybe a little bit of that initial adrenaline spike for a new manager and playing against Crewe at home on Tuesday night is very different to coming to Portman Road for them now. So might have to be patient at times, but ultimately I think the greater quality in Ipswich's ranks will shine through, and a 2-0 win I've got.
2-0. I'm going to say 2-1, which might make things a bit edgy at Portman Road tomorrow, but we're both saying a win. Hopefully we're both right. Enjoy the game if you are going. Follow it with us if you're not, and we'll catch you next time on Boot Room.